the core of it and the foundation of this is the scientific research that is being pioneered by people like yourself and needs to be taken out of the dark alley and be showcased to the world so it can be shown that it can be done safely and efficaciously and at low cost, and then it can fundamentally improve the human condition. And that's one of the most fundamental reasons why I have dedicated my life to bringing the enhanced games to life.
No, I think that's absolutely fantastic. What I would like to see, if possible, is some sort of clinical study when the showcase event is going to take place in December. And that way you can kind of track the longitudinal data of these athletes, maybe leading into the competition. And then, of course, on the competition, if you do the blood work and the MRIs, echocardiograms, and other metrics to kind of, look where their health parameters are at. If you can put that into a clinical study and then eventually get that publicized, right, on PubMed or some of the other publication platforms after it passes peer review, I think that will give concrete evidence that these performance-enhancing drugs can be used safely. Welcome to Vigorous Podcast. In this episode, I'm joined with Dr. Aron de Souza, who's going to start the Enhanced Games. Thanks so much for coming to the show. I would like to know your reasoning behind this and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came up to this idea of starting an Olympics alternative without drug testing, because I'm intrigued and fascinated.
Well, fundamentally, I've always believed in honesty. And one of the core challenges of the international sports world is that it's actually not honest. We have the Olympic Games where 44% of elite track and field athletes admit to using banned performance-enhancing substances, yet only 1% get caught. At the same time, we have an elite bureaucracy that runs the International Olympic Committee, who are flying around the world in private jets. They're living in palaces. They're being paid huge salaries while the athletes earn literally nothing. And it's a system of exploitation that has a dishonest lie at its core. And I thought to myself, there's a real opportunity here to build something better for the athletes, for the fans, and for science. And, if we can have an event that really showcases what humanity, not just an individual human being, but the total sum of humanity is possible, then we can really create something truly amazing.
Right. Right. I think it's absolutely great that you're willing to start this, because I'm sure you've gotten a lot of pushback over the last couple of months since announcing the Enhanced Games. I mean, when I first heard about the Enhanced Games through some of my subscribers, I started researching on Google, and every news article was just, in a negative context, like it's never going to happen. He's going to go against the IOC and then he's going to get banned. And all kinds of negativity. And I think it's very fascinating to see that you just keep going. And now you get some positive media exposure through channels like myself and Mark Bell. And now the bodybuilding community is absolutely fascinated and intrigued by this event because, bodybuilding, of course, there's a little segment of bodybuilding without the use of performance-enhancing drugs, but the large majority of the people in bodybuilding, they use performance-enhancing drugs. And we have events that are non-tested. And those are the biggest events, like the IFBB Mr. Olympia. Used to have a little bit of diuretic testing, which they got rid of because, it wasn't really performed properly. And besides the World Championships, which probably has the same issues as the IOC regarding corruption and drug testing. And trust me, I've coached many people in the World Championships, in all federations that host the World Championships. So we're very familiar with this aspect, but in the Olympics, it's not really there. So going forward, I believe that your first event is going to be in December of 2024. So we're about 1 year and 3 months out to this first event. What can we expect when this is going to take place?
Well, first and foremost, athletes can expect open qualification. So one of the core challenges of the Olympic apparatus is that you have to work through your national sports federations, your national Olympic committees, and play politics. So athletes who get to the Olympics are good athletes, but they're also great politicians because they have to navigate this extraordinary bureaucratic structure. And instead, we're going to be a lot more like the CrossFit Games, where if you want to come and run the 100-meter at the Enhanced Games, all you have to do is upload a video to your YouTube channel or to your Instagram of you running on a treadmill at the gym, and proving that you can do a reasonable time. Then we'll give you a small travel subsidy to come to a regional qualifier. And if you can prove you do that in real life, you'll get an appearance fee, thousands of dollars to come to the first games. And if you win, there will be a multi-million-dollar prize pool available for athletes who win medals and in particular break world records.
Wow, that's great. And of course, you're going to compare the world records to the ones that are currently standing, or are you going to have your own world record setting parameters and website where people can track this? Because this is without drug testing in place, and basically anything goes, assuming that the athlete stays healthy. Because this is, of course,
that's right.
One of the most prominent things that they mention in the news articles. The athletes need to stay healthy, and with doping in place, all the athletes are going to die. When in reality,
well, that's in fact not true, because
I know.
We are developing clinical protocols so that our games will be the safest sporting event in history. Why is that? Because the drug testing regimes are designed to test for cheating. They're not designed to test for safety. And if we were truly trying to solve for athlete safety, which is what we are doing at the Enhanced Games, well, then the Olympics would implement clinical protocols like we are doing. And the core of that is pre-competition screening. So blood work, EKGs, echocardiograms, maybe even MRIs. And our scientific and clinical advisors are building this protocol at the moment so that when you come to, say, call it your weigh-in day, where you get your bib number and your kit, you'll take a blood test, you'll get an echocardiogram, and we'll check if you have an enlarged heart. We'll check if you have any underlying cardiac conditions. And why doesn't the International Olympic Committee do this? Is because they're cheap, right? They don't want to spend the money to actually ensure the health of their athletes, because that cuts into their bottom line, and they've got to pay for their limousines, private jets, and palaces somehow.
Yeah, it's very common at the World Championships where a lot of the officials are just swimming in money, basically, because they use the federation to collect money from their governments, and they use the athletes. They keep pushing them, right? But they don't really care about their health. Now, in some countries, they do check for health parameters, maybe 3 months, 6 months before going into the competition season. But that isn't always the case, or at least in the bodybuilding circuit. And it really depends on the country and how the federation stands in relation to their athletes. But it's pretty similar all across the board. Most of the officials have never really done something similar.
Most of the officials aren't athletes.
Exactly.
Most of them start off as parents of some kid who is competing. Right? It's a complete farce, right? Yeah. And you have these people who have just failed upwards year after year, and suddenly they're running sporting federations or the IOC, which sort of almost behaves like a nation state, and they're in charge of billions of dollars, and it's being wasted left, right, and center. And at the same time, we have the athletes of the world who are living in poverty. Let me give you an example. Usain Bolt, who might be the greatest specimen of our species of all time, in his entire career has only earned about $12 million. We know this because he got scammed out of that money by his financial manager, and it's the subject of a court case. So he has made less money than a thoroughbred racing horse, an okay thoroughbred racing horse. And what does that say about our species and what we have allowed to fester when we have known for 50 years that the Olympics are broken and that they are corrupt? And it is just so unfortunate. And it's not due to a lack of audience, right? The Summer Olympics are the most watched sporting event in the world. They generate $8 billion in commercial revenues. Yet somehow the IOC can't find a cent of money to pay these athletes to ensure their health. And so, you know what? We're going to create a better system from the ground up.
Mm-hmm. Now, and I would really like to see that, because if you're, producing this event for the athletes, then I'm sure a lot of people, or some people that already failed the doping tests for the Olympics or other sports, other federations, they're going to come forward. And otherwise, you can simply go to Wikipedia and see all of the athletes that failed, because unfortunately, this kind of information is just publicly available, and it really doesn't look good on the athlete, of course. But you could, find an entire pool of athletes that failed the doping test in various years and simply reach out.
We have literally had hundreds of athletes reach out to us since we've launched.
Good. Uh-huh.
I've had a half a dozen Olympians who are on my athletes commission. And in addition, we have some of the world's top clinicians and scientists, including people like George Church from Harvard University, who sit on our scientific and ethical advisory commission. And so we are supported by athletes, by scientists, but also by leading venture capital funds. We have the financial resources to make this possible and to create a whole new system of sport where we can ensure athletes are rewarded fairly and that the system is designed to ensure the best outcomes for athletes, but also to create something that is entertaining, invigorating, and exciting. The world has lost interest in the Olympics. The number of television viewers has declined for 20 years, right?
Oh, okay.
And cities don't want to host the games anymore, right? It's a white elephant, and you might not be aware of, but the Commonwealth Games, sort of the British version of the Olympics for the old empire, the Australian government canceled the contract to host the 2026 Commonwealth Games because it was originally billed at $1.5 billion, and then went over budget to like $7 billion. So they just pulled the plug on it, and now the Commonwealth Games is dead. And the Olympics has gone over budget every time by tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars, and no one seems to care. The taxpayer of Athens or Rio or Beijing or Brisbane or Sydney is just being abused. And we need to bring the system to an end.
And it's very simple, similar to World Championships. So they use these drug testing, things in place to kind of legitimize these events from taking place, showing that it's quote unquote clean and healthy, right? And all falls within the parameters, even though most of the athletes still take some performance enhancing drugs or just try to circumvent the drug testing. But they use this drug testing to legitimize it in the eyes of the governments who participate, and then put up funds for the athletes, travel expenses for the coaching, the entire national team, and also pay a little bit of tribute.
But this is actually a poor decision on the part of government.
It is. Yeah. Let me continue, because this is where all the corruption comes from, by getting these governments involved and these national teams involved, because the people who run the national teams, they're so corrupt, and they use some of this government-sponsored money in the eyes of legitimacy to pay for certain athletes to win, to give gifts to higher-ranking officials to circumnavigate particular aspects of the sport. And this is why I got so tired of coaching athletes at the World Championships, because it doesn't matter how good you are. I mean, bodybuilding is like an opinion-based sport, and these opinions can sway. It's not like you stepped over the finish line, a microsecond faster than your next competition. No, it's very subjective. And in this subjectivity, and with the corruption on the back end, you see that fifth placed athletes place first, and vice versa. So a lot of athletes are bullied out of their national teams, and then being subject to drug testing when it's not even their time to do it. So it's very unfortunate. And I'm sure the same thing goes on the Olympic level as well, where making the national team is already a headache, and then navigating through the entire Olympics process is even more of a headache, because some people get favors and some people do not. And just the list goes on of these kinds of issues taking place. So that's right. Right. And you're taking this issue of countries and national teams completely out of it, right? So an athlete is an athlete. They represent themselves, and then they can participate.
Yeah, and we're not going to have sports federations. We're not going to have national Olympic committees. And these layers and layers of bureaucracy, an alphabet soup of regulatory and bureaucratic agencies that do nothing to serve the athlete. And all they do is to serve the bureaucrats who get paid huge salaries and create needless process and intermediation between the athlete and the spectator. Yeah. And so ultimately, do we really need layers and layers of sports federations and officials? No. Of course, there is some need for some officials and sort of things like timekeeping and rule setting so that we have a fair race. But ultimately, we don't need these layers of bureaucrats. And I want to burn that whole show down and return that revenue to where it's rightfully deserved, to the athlete.
Right. Yeah. Now, that's very commendable. And I would love to see it happen over the next couple of years. So your first event, again, is in December 2024. That's like a testing event. What can we expect from this event? And which sports are going to take place?
So it's most likely to be an exhibition event focused on track and field events. So, I think 100 meter, 400 meter, mile, high jump, long jump. And, what can you expect? You can see world records obliterated. Who's going to want to watch the old slow Olympics when you can watch the fast, modern, enhanced games?
No, that's very exciting. What are we going to do to kind of ensure the health of the athletes? Because now that we're taking the cap off without drug testing, again, what I saw before is that a lot of the news agencies says that it's going to be unhealthy, albeit that I know coaching many bodybuilders and athletes over the last couple of years that it's actually more unhealthy to try to beat the drug test with particular practices than just run the compounds continuously. So are there going to be doctors in place? I mean, you mentioned that you have several doctors on board to kind of guide with health parameters and health screening before these events take place.
Yeah, and so the number one thing is that athletes who go onto bodybuilding.com and then they order their steroids online and they inject themselves are doing something that's really unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to take this whole process out of the dark alley and literally shine light upon it. And that light is clinical supervision. It's creating an environment where athletes feel comfortable to discuss this with their doctors. And our clinical screening protocols are designed around athlete safety, not eliminating cheating, right? That's like fair sport is what WADA and the Olympics are concerned about. They're concerned about creating a level playing field, not for the health and the safety of the athletes. If they were truly concerned about the safety of the athletes, they would allow good quality clinical supervision as what we're doing. So number one, you will have to have a doctor supervise you. And number two, as an athlete, you will have to meet our pre-screening protocols. And if you have an enlarged heart or an underlying cardiac condition, then you may be excluded from competition, or you may have to go through more rigorous screening. And that's one thing that we're working through with our insurers at the moment.
So what I'm worried about, knowing the nature of athletes, is that some of them will have the experience to kind of circumvent the drug testing, right? And test clean on the day of the competition or whenever a drug test is taking place. So what I'm worried about, knowing the athletes, are they going to circumnavigate the health screening by doing particular practices to keep their heart smaller or their health parameters better, right? Which usually in bodybuilding, we kind of do all the time because we still would like to have an insurance, a health insurance, but our heart and our blood work parameters and our body mass index doesn't kind of, align with what the healthcare providers are willing to tolerate for healthcare insurance. So,
that's actually really interesting. And that's a point of scientific education to the insurers and to the scientific community. And so if you look at the health parameters of a normal individual, right, and an average person is, obese in America.
They're not healthy, yeah.
Those aren't the parameters that we should be using. Right, yeah, exactly. And so the parameters are those of an elite athlete. And we're specifically designing our clinical protocols around what a healthy elite athlete looks like. And what is very exciting to the scientists who are involved in this project is a body of high quality data on the elite athlete, right? So right now, it's very hard to get genomics data on elite athletes, to get blood samples with the proper patient consents to build that profile. And that's something that we have, a huge advantage in. And this will be an enduring competitive moat for us because few, if not any organizations have this wealth of data available to them.
Right. Because you're in touch with so many athletes and they're also willing to do all these health screening and blood work analysis and organ imaging and that kind of stuff, right? So basically what you're saying, you should allow higher than the reference range of hematocrit, for example, and higher than the reference range of red blood cells or creatine phosphokinase or liver enzymes for that matter, which can also elevate in strenuous events. So will you ever publicize those reference ranges? Because me as a bodybuilder would like to know this special reference range for athletes, because we're always fighting against this clinical reference range that's established on general population. And we always have to fight with our doctors. Serum creatinine is a little bit elevated and estimated glomerular filtration rate is a little bit on the low side. So we check cystatin C and some other markers to assess if our kidney function is correct. And then most of the bodybuilders fight with their primary healthcare physician. Am I healthy or not unhealthy? And then I have to remind them of other tests for the kidneys, which the patient care coordinator doesn't even know about. So will you publicize something like that so athletes, the next 1.5 years or 1 year and 3 months from now can kind of start leaning towards this blood work parameters that is going to be, used at the time of these events?
Absolutely. And, one thing that will make the whole performance medicine and performance therapies industry more successful is open and transparent data. And so we are not just hosting an event for athletes, it's also an event for scientists. We're going to host large scientific conferences to bring the world together and to share this information in a really transparent way and create scholarly journals. We're hosting the first conference on enhancements, which we'll be announcing shortly, but it's probably going to be early next year. And so that doctors and scientists can feel safe to talk about this in an open and public way, rather than sort of the strange underground of scientists and doctors at the moment. And the true problem is that the International Olympic Committee and the World Anti-Doping Authority are funding anti-science, anti-performance medicine initiatives that prevent the full and open discourse about the real possibilities and the safe possibilities of performance medicine.
And the funny thing is that over the last couple of years, ever since hormone replacement therapy and anti-aging clinics started coming, more prominent all over the world, especially in America and some places in Europe, here in Asia, that the science sometimes is very negative when it comes to performance-enhancing drugs, right? And really hammers on the potential negative health ramifications. Again, potential, without clinical supervision and intervention to make sure that the health is sustained. And then in other aspects, you see so many improvements in the outcome of life, quality of life, longevity, recovery of organ strain, which was coming from, poor lifestyle choices, for example. And it's very funny to see that a lot of the practices that athletes have been doing over the last couple of decades are now slowly phasing into general population and becoming available through anti-aging clinics. It's stuff that we've
absolutely
always done already.
And the way I would analogize it is the use of cosmetic surgery in Hollywood. Think about like Botox. 20 years ago, Botox was this weird thing that only crazy celebrities could get in Rodeo Drive. It was like really expensive. It was unknown. It was risky. But because of the large uses of it, the transparent data, the clinical supervision, and that feedback loop of more patients, more data, more clinical supervision, higher quality products, now we see Botox and cosmetic medicine used everywhere. And I think on an analogous level, like Hollywood is a very competitive place, right, where people will go to any lengths to become famous. Yet, we don't see an epidemic of actresses dying from using too much cosmetic surgery, right? And I think this is the parallel for us, in that in a very similar way, we can create a safe environment for the use of performance medicine among athletes. And then when we break the 100-meter world record late next year, the first thing that the millions of people watching are going to say is, what was he on and how can I get it?
Yeah.
Right. And we're going to create a revolution in anti-aging and performance medicine. And to go back to your point about governments should be funding anti-aging and performance medicine research. It should be foremost, because we have an aging population problem in the West. We have a Medicare, we have a Medicaid, we have an NHS, we have a pensions problem. And if we can just make our population stronger and younger and healthier for longer, we will drive increases in productivity that will create a renaissance. And what is the back of this? Well, the core of it and the foundation of this is the scientific research that is being pioneered by people like yourself and needs to be taken out of the dark alley and be showcased to the world, so it can be shown that it can be done safely and efficaciously and at low cost, and then it can fundamentally improve the human condition. And that's one of the most fundamental reasons why I have dedicated my life to bringing the Enhanced Games to life.
No, I think that's absolutely fantastic. What I would like to see, if possible, is some sort of clinical study when the showcase event is going to take place in December. And that way you can kind of track the longitudinal data of these athletes, maybe leading into the competition. And then, of course, on the competition, if you do the blood work and the MRIs, echocardiograms, and other metrics to kind of, look where their health parameters are at. If you can put that into a clinical study and then eventually get that publicized, right, on PubMed or some of the other publication platforms after it passes peer review, I think that will give concrete evidence that these performance-enhancing drugs can be used safely, assuming that everybody's using the similar performance-enhancing drugs, which, again, the list is not that extensive on what you can use in track and field. I think that is going to break some, preconceptions about, the safety of PEDs, because I mean, again, we can take the bodybuilding space as an example where a lot of people are now open, right? Maybe the last 5-6 years, bodybuilders, people in the fitness community are just open about their use of performance enhancing drugs. Again, in other sports, it's not as forthcoming because of the Olympics and the stigma that's attached to it in general population. But in the fitness industry, we no longer care. And, besides a few mishaps here and there, obviously, most of the people that participate in the fitness industry and use performance enhancing drugs, they're really on top of their health. They do frequent blood work. They do frequent organ imaging. And they publicize that on the internet. And even though it doesn't fall within general population guidelines, I would say that overall people are healthier or more youthful, more productive, in a better state of health than general population, and also sustain their health much longer. I mean, we have 50, 60, 70-year-olds in the bodybuilding community that are in perfect states of health, and they use pharmacology to get that done.
Yeah, and look at what Brian Johnson, the founder of Braintree, has been doing. He's a huge advocate in the anti-aging space, and he's captivated the public imagination. Yeah. And who would not want to be younger, faster, stronger for longer, right? Shouldn't this be like the fundamental aspiration of humanity? And the reality is that right now, performance medicine, anti-aging medicine, is locked up among a kind of quirky Silicon Valley biohacking billionaire class, and on the other side, this bodybuilding community. And what we want to really show the world in a really tangible way, almost like a Sputnik or a man on the moon kind of way, is that when we break the mile, the 100-meter, the 400-meter world record, people are going to say, wow, my conceptions have changed, right? The world has changed. Science is real. Science is here to make us stronger and faster and better. And who's going to want to watch the old slow Olympics when you can watch the fast, modern, enhanced games? And I worry about the taxpayers in LA or in Brisbane who are subjected to this racket, right? To be stuck with a white elephant where hundreds of billions of dollars are going to be wasted. Yeah. No one's going to watch the LA 28 Olympics or the Brisbane 32 Olympics, even if they even happen.
Yeah, I mean, the time will tell, of course, if your event really takes off and a lot of athletes are going to make a shift and then the sponsors get on board, then it wouldn't surprise me. Then, of course, keeping everything legitimate and then making sure the corruption doesn't move over. As people move over, that's going to be the biggest.
We're not taking those people. Yeah, I'll assure you of that. And on the corruption point, you don't see corruption in Formula One. You don't see corruption in baseball and basketball and the NFL. Why? Because these are run like private corporations, right? If I become corrupt, my shareholders, my board of directors are going to excoriate me, right? However, if the IOC president and his cronies are corrupt, they're accountable to no one. The athletes can't stand up. The broadcasters are locked into these decade-long contracts, and the IOC members, they're not elected by Olympians. They elect themselves, right? It's the most unaccountable organization that exists in the entire world.
Yeah, it sounds very, very similar to what happens at the World Championships. It's just these people are on top, and they just elect who they like or who gets the bribes in the earliest, and it just keeps going and going and going. And again, none of these officials have ever participated in the sports that they manage. And that's why they don't even understand what the athletes have to go through, the suffering and the determination and the decades of investment even needed to win at the highest level. They don't care. It's really unfortunate to see. And that's why you see from the World Championships, all of the elite athletes are just moving over to federations where there's no corruption and no drug testing and none of this nonsense going on in the background because they're tired of it. So offering an alternative like you are going to do, I think it's going to be successful rather fast. And I'm really hoping to see it sooner than later. I'm a little bit disappointed that I have to wait 1 year and 3 months before it's going to happen.
Well, it takes time to build these things. It takes time to build these things. But I'm very pleased to say that we have the world's top venture capital funds. We have media partners. We have production partners, venue partners who are all in various stages of negotiation and signing up to help us bring this event to life. And it's a huge opportunity to take on what I think is the crown jewel of international sports. Most sports entrepreneurs, to be honest, aren't ambitious enough. They try and create a new version of football or a different kind of federation, but no one has ever tried to take on the International Olympic Committee. They've been around for 120 years. They've been corrupt as hell for at least 50 of those years, and no one has ever tried to build a competitor. And I just saw this as such a huge opportunity, and it's like Blockbuster Video is not going to invent Netflix.
Right.
The taxi monopoly wasn't going to invent Uber, right? And so someone has to come along who's a disruptor, who doesn't mind being criticized a little bit. And we've received our fair share of criticism in the traditional media.
Yeah.
But however, like it was interesting, like the Spectator, which is this right-wing publication here in Britain, wrote this scathing article, and they invited me to come and debate the author. And at the end of that debate, the author was like, "Oh yeah, you know what? I actually agree with you. I think you're right, and I think the enhanced games are going to succeed." And I went on Piers Morgan, and they paid this Olympian to debate me. We had a good 5-minute debate, but by the end of it, he was like, "Well, okay, the performance enhancement thing is bold, but certainly the athlete remuneration side is very compelling, right?
Yeah.
It is unfortunate that that excellence is not rewarded in the Olympic system, right? It's penalized in so many ways."
It is.
And so
It is.
creating a more compelling financial system is just really something that is so exciting on so many levels, and will recruit the best athletes in the world to our side.
Yeah, and I'm sure once you first and the second, the larger event takes place somewhere in 2025. I mean, once you get those initial events out of the door, a lot of people are going to be on board because they see the potential prize money, the respect for the athletes. Yeah, of course. I mean, money talks, right? So it's the same thing here at the World Championships. Like the Thai government, for example, they would pay 1 million baht, so that's about $35,000 dollars. Sorry, $35,000 for their athletes if they win a gold medal at World Championships or other sports, right? At Bodybuilding World Championships or other sports. And then the Olympic Committee started complaining because they only got 1 million baht prize money for a gold medal once every 4 years. So they retroactively reduced the prize money to a fourth, 250,000 baht. So then suddenly the athletes who were thinking about winning prize money of 1 million baht only got 250,000. And these kinds of things I just hear over and over and over about. But if you have some sort of privatized company that manages the prize money for athletes, and maybe you can get the public involved with some crowdfunding, right? And maybe you start announcing that in the first event, the showcase event. I think with crowdfunding on board, a lot of the athletes can get serious payments, and maybe the sponsorships will come later, right? Unless they're already over this roadblock of, having performance enhancing drugs involved. Because if you look at Lance Armstrong, he was sponsored by basically everybody, right? He was one of the best in cycling. And then retroactively, they wanted their prize money back after he was exposed for using performance enhancing drugs, which basically everybody in the Tour de France uses performance enhancing drugs.
Yeah. Cycling is okay.
Yeah.
But this comes back to my original point.
Yeah.
This is all about truth. We want to restore truth to the world of sports. And, Lance Armstrong, Tim Montgomery, Marion Jones are really present examples of the lie that exists in international sports. And I'm sure we'll get to the Paris Olympics and there'll be doping scandal after doping scandal. But you know what? It's going to show the world that this is a farce, right? And that, some academic commentators argue that 99% of Olympians are using some kind of banned performance enhancing drug, right? I think it's around the 40% number. And that's a report that was in a peer-reviewed scientific journal. But ultimately, restoring truth will bring sponsors back, right? And it will drive the economics of this entire equation. And by being open and honest is what leads to good outcomes.
Yeah, luckily every couple of years there's more sponsors focused on elite athletes, right? Whether those are shoe companies that really focus on elite athletes, or bicycle manufacturers, or health supplementation manufacturers. They're all interested in an event like this, I would assume. Because the athletes that they attach their names to, or just attaching your name to the event, showcases that their products can actually help beat these, Olympic records or whatever records you're going to.
This is going to be the greatest marketing platform of all time, because about 15% of the world's GDP is spent on pharmaceutical products and on the healthcare industry. And so, what better place to showcase the potential of science than at the enhanced games? You can't showcase the potential of science at the traditional Olympics, but here the use of science and technology is allowed. And, we've had, for example, robotics manufacturers reach out to us and they say, "Oh, can I build a robot to compete at the enhanced games?" And I'm like, "You can't build a car. You can't build a car to run the 100 meters. But if you could build a bipedal,
Uh-huh.
humanoid-like robot
Hmm.
that weighed the same as a human, that was as tall as a human, and could command itself through full artificial intelligence, I would let it compete. Of course, it would
Hmm.
be a different category: men,
Right.
women, robot,
Robots. Yeah.
right? And wouldn't that showcase something very powerful of what it means to be human,
Hmm.
where we're more capable than machines? And to tell you the truth, a robot today can run 100 meters. A humanoid robot can run 100 meters in about 22 seconds, which is
Okay.
pathetic.
Yeah.
And a humanoid robot can't even dream to run the marathon, to do the pommel horse, to do the rings, to swim. And so, there's such an opportunity here for us to showcase new and emerging technologies in an innovative format that is entertaining to the public, i.e., will draw in television viewers, but also is a great sponsorship activation. Right? If you're Microsoft or Amazon or Google and you want to show off your latest technology, why don't you do it at the enhanced games? Build a robot that has Apple Vision Pro goggles built in that can throw the javelin. It'll be pretty cool.
That would be
And
very cool.
the
Yeah.
Olympics is stuck in this ancient rule set that's dictated by Victorian mentalities, and we're about the future. We're not about Greek gods. We're about superheroes.
Talking about the future and having robots compete, the topic of transgender athletes is always a very hot topic. Very, very hot topic. And
Yeah.
most of the transgender athletes use some sort of performance enhancing drugs to masculinize themselves or feminize themselves. So would there be a
Mhm.
separate category? Are they even allowed to compete? Like, what is your stance on that now? And maybe, going forward, will that kind of division of competition be included?
So that's an interesting question. And as a gay man myself, I thought a lot about this issue. And I know there's a lot of sensitivity about it, particularly to other members of the LGBT community. So I'll use my words very precisely here. So the standard discourse is that trans women, men who have transitioned to a female gender, have an insurmountable biological advantage over cis or biological women.
Right.
And I accept that proposition. However, trans people in general, as you well noted, use science. They use performance therapies to transform their bodies, and in many ways using amounts of hormones or other supplementation that would get them traditionally banned from sporting competition. And so they are enhanced humans. And then the real question is, could a trans woman, who is by definition enhanced, compete against not against a natural biological woman, but an enhanced biological woman?
Ah.
And that is yet to be seen. And that changes the whole paradigm where cis women who say, "Oh, I'm disadvantaged because this individual has been able to use science to transform their body," will say, "Well, you can use science too." So the enhanced games always wants to be open as a fundamental principle to social, technological, and scientific change. And the trans issue is only at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Right? Think about CRISPR DNA editing technology.
Mhm.
It's real. There are babies being born today who are Gattaca babies. They are edited, and they did not consent to that procedure. Their parents did it to them. There's no way they can change themselves. And in 15 to 20 years' time, they're going to want to compete at the Olympics. And under the current rule set, they are insurmountably and permanently enhanced and probably will get banned from competition, despite the fact they did not do this to themselves. And so we are very open to this kind of social, technological, and scientific change, and we want to support it.
Right. That's good. That's good. I'm very interested to see what's going to happen over the next couple of months and years, as this enhanced games is coming to a fruition. What I'm a little bit worried about is, of course, you're having doctors on board, right, for medical supervision. But do you feel that the current medical field is going to restrict medical licenses or put a cap on how much these doctors can contribute? Because I feel that doctors are very knowledgeable. but they're always limited by their medical certificate, through the board of directors and making sure that they stay within the medical guidelines. And that might not be helpful for athletes because the doctors are not willing to lose their medical license. And if they do lose their medical license, then the medical supervision is basically non-existent. And they're like rogue drug gurus, basically like I am. I don't have a medical license to lose, but I do give plenty of advice on how to use these drugs safely. But that's far beyond medical oversight or clinically recognized therapies. And most of the athletes, they don't use it for a particular medical condition. They use it to improve performance. And the dosages might be substantially higher.
Well, and this comes to this comes to a fundamental problem about the medical industry as we have it today. Medicine today is about curing disease.
Yeah.
It's not about making us better human beings. And that requires a paradigmatic shift. But however, hundreds of athletes have reached out to me since we started the Enhanced Games. They've gone to our website, enhanced.org, which I encourage your listeners and viewers to go and
Put
visit.
It down below, guys.
However, we've had even more. We've had even more doctors and scientists reach out to us.
Okay.
So many that I haven't even had time to speak with them all, right? And if you go into our community Discord, you will see there are dozens and dozens of doctors discussing, such details that of science that I can't even comprehend it, and that's what is exciting, right? And because the scientific establishment is very different from the medical establishment. The medical establishment is about curing, treating chronic diseases in particular. The scientific establishment is about the future, right? It's about fixing problems. It's about advancing our species. And so there's this whole community of performance medicine scientists who really see the potential for making our species better. And we're very excited to advance the body of scientific literature in this space.
Okay, that's good. That's good that there's a lot of people in this community already on board with that, because what I'm always wondering about is, these people that go through university, they get their medical license, or they get into this research or scientist level. Are they going to be demonized and scrutinized for being on board? But if you already have a lot of people on board, then I guess it's not something to worry about. I'm in touch with many doctors.
No, they're not afraid anymore. Before we launched and announced this, it was very hard to get athletes in particular to sign up, to be on the commission, to take on the IOC. But the scientists were like, yeah, great, mate. They've been talking about this forever. People like Professor Julian Sepulrescu, who's the chair of bioethics at Oxford University, has been arguing for 20 years that there should be a non-tested Olympics. And, we have amazing people, right? From Cambridge, from Oxford, from Harvard, from the world's top universities, who are on our Scientific and Ethical Advisory Commission. There's great support for this on so many levels.
Man, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's what my main concern was, going forward, how the medical aspect of this is going to take place, because I was afraid that many people would not be on board. But if there's so many people on board already, then I guess it's not going to be an issue. And these athletes have a body of knowledge that they can access to make better decisions. Because I feel with these drug-tested sports, in order to circumnavigate the drug test, a lot of the decisions being made actually get these athletes into a worse state of health. Right? Circumventing and beating the drug test, makes them rely on drugs that have poor clinical evidence behind it, maybe particular practices that are unhealthy, or, using catheters and worse things to pass, the doping. I've heard it all. I've seen it all, to pass drug samples. I mean, there's a interesting documentary called, Icarus on Netflix.
Oh, yes. I watched Icarus years ago. Yeah. 2 documentaries, Icarus and FIFA Uncovered. Those were the 2 documentaries that really inspired me to start the Enhanced Games. I was like, when you have state-sanctioned doping programs that, where hundreds of millions of dollars are being spent, like, how can you ever dream that WADA, which only employs about 100 people, can fight against the Russian, the Chinese, these German governments, right? It's completely a farce.
Yeah. No, and again, it's just there to keep up appearances, to legitimize it for the governments that, put so much money into these games. And then most of the money is ending up in the hands of the officials, not the athletes.
Mhm.
Not the athletes. I mean,
That's right. That's right.
I've talked with athletes that had to, double mortgage their house just to, get everything in place for them to compete at particular events. And then there's nothing at the finish line besides a gold medal. And let's be honest, the media will not give you, the time of day if you get silver. And even if you get a gold medal, you maybe get 1 or 2 articles posted about you. You get a warm welcome when you get back to your home country. And that's about it. How to monetize that going forward. Mm-hmm. Many of these athletes can't even be on social media because the national team doesn't allow it.
And that's true. And, one of the most shocking things I've ever learned in my life is, do you know what a bronze medal is called in the Olympic community?
No.
It's called a loser medal. Right? And imagine that you are the third best athlete in your category for which you have dedicated your entire life to, and you get a loser medal. And you can't monetize anything, right?
No.
And I talk to ex-Olympians, people who have chests full of medal. And, what are they doing? They're at best a personal trainer at Equinox. Maybe they're a physiotherapist, and occasionally, like the rowers do well because they went to posh private schools and they end up as, bankers or, salespeople. But like your run-of-the-mill athlete has given up their teens and their 20s to become world class, and they're being paid less than a racehorse, right?
Yeah.
And let's compare this. Like, why is it that golfers, tennis players, baseball players, basketball players are making so much money? Right? Ronaldo makes more money than like all the Olympians combined. And why is that? Is because he is working within a structure that is commercial, not a structure that is a not-for-profit and that is driven by corruption. And so in a not-for-profit structure, the only way to extract profits is through corruption. In a for-profit structure, there are lots of ways to extract profits, all of which are open, fair, and transparent. And so by creating our organization as a for-profit, we will eventually give equity to athletes who win medals and make them co-owners of our league and give them the opportunity to ride our success with us in the same way that if you're an early employee at Google or Facebook, you became millionaires or even in some case billionaires.
Okay. So that's even better, because once the athlete is done competing, they can still be part of board of directors perhaps, or do some oversight regarding the future of these enhanced games, right? If I'm not mistaken, because they can have a little bit of an insight and extra word on particular decisions that are being made, similar to how people own a certain amount of stocks in a company. Yeah, shareholder company, right? So no, that's great, because most of these athletes at the Olympics or other sports, once their career is over, and let's see, most guys have a 5 to 10 year career at best. And they might compete in 2 world championships, 4 world championships or 2 Olympics, because they're 4 years apart. And then the career is kind of over. You put your body under so much strain, and the medical supervision, again, it costs a lot of money to compete at the highest level, whether that's performance enhancing drugs or health management or just traveling all over the world. It takes a huge toll. I mean, my wife competed at the highest level of the world championships. Again, that's physique sports. She did it for 5 years, never got anything less than a bronze medal. So it's bronze, silver, or gold. She got 5 gold medals at the world championships and 3 at Asian. And, afterwards, there's not so much monetization possible because, of course, most athletes leave disgruntled because they get stabbed in the back eventually. And then you don't even want to be part of that federation and particular, avenue anymore. And even though she's very business savvy and helps me on the back end, when it comes to the fitness part, it's very hard to monetize. And I see nowadays people who are on social media, Instagram, YouTube, other social media platforms, they're not even competing, and they're doing 10 times better than the athletes who do. And if we can combine both, allow these competitive athletes to really make, their social media presence available for everybody in the world, I think they can monetize it so much better through sponsorships and all these back end deals that can take place when you're an athlete. But you need to allow these athletes to be on social media so they can promote themselves. And I don't think you guys have an issue with that. but world
No,
champion.
no, no, absolutely. And ultimately, we want our athletes to become celebrities, and we want
Mm,
them to become rich. Because
good.
why do little kids lionize someone like Ronaldo? Oh, he's a good football player, but you know what? He's got a mansion, he's got a jet, he's got a
Nice.
Bugatti, he's got $1 million wristwatch, he's got a beautiful girlfriend, right? He's fodder for the tabloids, right?
Right.
And that lifestyle is actually just marketing for the sport, right? It
Yeah.
brings in fans, it drives engagement. And so if we have thousands of athletes who are making millions of dollars, right? I'm going to be a very happy CEO and president of the Enhanced Games because all of that is just marketing
Right.
for us, right? And so I want my athletes to be rich. I
Right.
want them to have mansions and jets, right? Because
Good.
ultimately that brings in wider engagement for the entire apparatus.
Right. And you're also showing that 10, 15, 20 years from now, all these kids that are now watching these games have an incentive to join in because they know that they're going to be taken care of financially and also from a respect and public appearance. Whereas with the Olympic Games, I mean, I think most athletes competing there, they realize that there's nothing after it unless you become part of the corruption machine, which also happens, right? Then you can start getting some checks. But
Yeah,
with privatized,
yeah,
sporting events, most of the athletes, even the lower paying ones, they're still making good money. They're still doing well, and then afterwards, through endorsement
yeah.
deals and social media presence, they can extend their career well beyond. And again, you guys can everybody just look at the fitness industry. There's Olympians, like at the Mr. Olympia, who haven't competed for 10, 15, 20 years, still being part of the fitness industry and having their own supplement company, very business savvy, and they're still making money, probably
Yeah.
more than during the time they were competing. But it was basically like a launching platform competition, not you compete and
Mhm.
you're done. It's over. Right? You have to become, some regular Joe back in your home country, which happens a lot. I mean, if you start looking up some of these Olympic athletes, what they're doing now, some of them are just working a boring job. If they invested 10 years of their lives, maybe 15 years to get to that highest level, there's no payoff. It's really unfortunate.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And like I was an elite cyclist, and I wouldn't call it myself elite. I was like a semi-elite cyclist in my 20s, and I'm so glad I didn't pursue that. Like my parents said, "Oh, you better go to university, go get your law degree at Oxford,
Mm.
go and make a stable career." Because I thought to myself, I was young. I thought, "Oh, if I win a gold medal, I get to the Tour de France, my life is made." No, like most people who aren't at the Lance Armstrong level of cycling after they're done, they're lucky if they're working in a bike shop,
Right.
right? And they've given their whole youth to the sporting movement, and someone is making a profit. And it's not the athletes at the Olympics, it's the bureaucrats.
Yeah.
And so we need to wildly restructure that system and build something that's better, that's fairer, that's honest, and that's real. And the core of that is building a product that consumers want to engage with. And the one thing that we've learned from watching is that we can have all of these debates, right? We can have the debates about the ethics of performance enhancements. We can have the debates about the medical and the scientific procedures. But at the end of the day, consumers want to watch this,
I'm
right?
I'm 100% convinced.
Everyone has
Yeah.
told us this.
Yeah, I'm 100% convinced. So you guys will probably organize some sort of pay-per-view or something on a website where people can watch this, like the Mr. Olympia is a streaming event where you don't even have to go there. This is the highest level of bodybuilding competition. You can just log into the website, buy a pay-per-view for the 2 days that the event is being hosted, and watch it anywhere in the world. And usually these streaming events are very well done to the point you can just watch it, similar quality as Netflix, like full 1080p, high definition quality. So will there be something like that to stream the event worldwide?
Oh, I can't say the exact particulars, but
Mm.
we are working on a broadcast partnership at the moment
Mm.
with the world's largest broadcasters and streamers. So, this is going to be a highly produced, world class event. I'll emphasize, I have we haven't really talked about my background, but I have a
Mm.
20-year career in venture capital and private equity. I'm a business person first and foremost. I'm a problem solver and I'm an entrepreneur. And I would not have embarked upon this project if the end result was, a pay-per-view stream online, live on Twitch.
Okay.
Right? This is going to be an event that our goal is. for 100 million people to watch it. And I want this to be a man on the moon kind of Sputnik moment. It's like, where were you when humanity broke the 100-meter world record? The first time that science was unleashed, and we proved that science was real and that humanity was even more capable of doing something that we hitherto thought was impossible, right?
I
And
hope
it
to
will
be there
be
in
an
person.
extraordinary moment on television.
I hope to be there in person. I probably will go to
Please
the first,
do, please do. We'll,
first
we'll,
event and
we'll put
second
you on the
event.
invite list. I'd love to have you.
Because it's usually around the time that the Mr. Olympias. It's the end of the year, so it's stupid if I don't go to the same event and extend my stay in the United States. So the first one is going to be in the United States. Am I correct? The
Yes,
showcase event.
So almost certainly the first event will be in the United States. We are studying our demographics very closely, following where our followers and our engagement comes from. But the reality is the US is the largest and the deepest market for this. And most likely the event will be hosted in Florida, Texas, or California, because weather is permitting well at that time of year. So we're in venue negotiations right now. And it's coming together really well. And so we'll be making those announcements in due course.
Okay, please. Whenever you get the announcement, please let me know so I can update it in the YouTube description section, because once these videos are live, they're live forever. So people might watch it 6 months from now and then they want to know where the event is. But I'll keep my my audience updated for sure. And then the main event will be somewhere around the same time as the Summer Olympics in Paris, or will it be on a different timeline?
No. So our first event will be in December of 2024 after the Paris Olympics.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
And then subsequently it will be every year. And certainly we will be going back to the same host cities and facilities over and over. So the core problem about the Olympics is that they build a dozen stadiums and they throw them away after 2 weeks. Yeah. And that's extraordinarily wasteful. That's where the massive billions of dollars in waste come from. And so our full stack games, which will first happen in 2025, will have fewer sports. So no one's interested in curling. No one's interested in breakdancing. They're interested in the simple sports: track and field, swimming, gymnastics, combat sports, and weightlifting.
Right.
Those are the 5 core sports, and those can be delivered without any specialist infrastructure. There's no point in building a $300 million cycling velodrome for a sport that no one watches and that virtually no one participates in.
Yeah.
And that's the waste of the Olympic movement. And we're going to prevent that by staying in a small handful of host cities, doing the games annually, and focusing on the sports that actually matter in terms of television and social media impact.
Right. Do you think once you start really lifting off and this, enhanced games become super popular, would you be willing to reuse the old venues designed for the actual Olympics? Right, the old Olympics.
Yeah,
because I think you blow some new life into these events.
I sincerely think within 10 years. Yeah, I sincerely think within 10 years the Olympics won't exist. Right. Wow. Every other international multi-sport not-for-profit event has failed, and there used to be a dozen cities that would bid to host the Olympics, and now it's basically gone down to 0. So they used to award the games just 6 years in advance. And they're so short of host cities that the Brisbane Olympics were awarded 12 years in advance. And let's be honest, I'm Australian. Brisbane's a nice city, but it's a second-tier Australian city. Thomas Bach and the IOC executive board felt that China and Russia were their saviors, right? China has all of these cities that could host the games, right? They were willing to throw huge amounts of money, and they're not accountable, in a democratic way. But however, the reality is that because of geopolitics, the games can't go back to China.
Yeah.
If the Republicans are in power in the United States, they would probably ban the Americans from competing at a Chinese Olympics for geopolitical reasons. And that would be like the 1980 Moscow Olympics, just the death of the Olympic movement.
Yeah, and it's very unfortunate because I've been to the Beijing Olympics Park, and it's a beautiful area. Of course, the air quality is abysmal in Beijing. I mean, let's be honest. It's not healthy for the athletes to be there. But it's really a shame that they erected so many places to participate and practice these sports, and they're rarely being used. And maybe the national team of China is using these venues, but not to the extent that the Olympics would. I mean, ideally, you would have the Olympics in the same place every year, and then they can expand the venue going forward. I mean, many of the other sporting events are in the same places every year. Yeah.
Well, actually, all the other sporting events are, right? Like you think about like Wimbledon or Grand Slam tennis in general is such a fantastic event because you have the opportunity to rebuild and improve the infrastructure, and it gets better and better year on year, and it's such a fabulous experience.
Yeah, and the Tour de France is always in France, for example, and there's nothing that comes close to it regarding the interest of the public when there's a tour of bicycles somewhere else. So let's just wrap it up then here, because we have a little bit of internet connection issues, and I think we've covered most of the topics that we wanted to discuss. Where can people find you? And if they want to get in touch with you, where can people find your social media accounts and websites and that kind of stuff?
Just go to enhance.org. That's our website that's very comprehensive and really details everything about us. And find us on Twitter at enhance_games. Okay.
What you have your own website as well, right? Dr. Aron? What is your website?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good.
AaronDeSouza.com.
Okay, perfect. Guys, I'll link everything down below. Thank you guys. Dr. Aron, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Please keep us updated of the latest developments so I can update the description section. And honestly, I'm really looking forward to this. I'll do my absolute best to come to the first event in December 2024 because I want to see these world records broken and then some. And I'm convinced that not only will they get broken, but they will be shattered with an event like yours.
Absolutely. It's going to be the most extraordinary moment to showcase what the human body is capable of. And thank you for your support. And we really look forward to a continued dialogue and meeting you in person when the first games happen.
Awesome. I'll see you soon. Thanks so much and have a nice day. Take care.